Hello everyone. Today we're going to take a look at midpoint and distance formulas. So first let's begin with your distance formula. Before we talk about the formula, what is distance between 2 points? Your distance between 2 points is also the length of the line between 2 points, or how long it is. Just so you understand what we're actually finding. So we're finding how long a line is. Here is your formula. Distance equals, and you're going to draw a large square root symbol. Again, be sure you write exactly what I write. This is a mathematical relationship, so accuracy is important. The square root of the second x minus the first x squared plus the second y minus the first y squared. So this is how we're going to find the distance between 2 points, or how long a line is. So let's do a couple of examples. Your first example is we're going to find the distance between the point 5,9 and -7, -7. So I want to know how long the line is between these 2 points. So first I write my formula. Distance equals the square root of second x minus first x squared plus the second y minus the first y squared. Next, I'm going to plug in my values. So where do I get my values from? From my 2 points. This is 5,9 is your first point, so this is your first x and your first y. -7, -7 is your second point, so this is your second x and your second y. So let's plug these in. D, or distance, equals the square root of -7 minus 5 squared plus second y is -7 minus my first y, which is 9 squared. Now, I could work this out, and that is perfectly fine step by step, but I want us to use Desmos. So let's open our calculator. First, you can type it in exactly as it looks. Type your square root symbol, parenthesis, first or second x, which is -7, minus your first x, which is 5, parenthesis squared, plus parenthesis my second y, which is -7, minus my first y, which is 9, parenthesis squared. So I got 20. So the distance between those 2 points, or the length of that line, is 20 units. Sometimes though, you'll be given the graph. And when you're given the graph, so we're going to call this example 2. In your notes, all I want you to do is just sketch this line. Just draw a line. You don't have to draw the coordinate plane or the coordinate grid. So if I want to find the distance between these 2 points, I have to read the 2 points. So let's find our 2 points. So the first point we come to is -2, 0. So in your notes, I just want you to put -2, 0 above that point. That way you'll know that you have to read the points first. Our second point, remember, when we're reading, we always start at the origin. We go to the right 3 and down 5. Right 3, down 5 is 3, -5. So now that I have read my points, I use the same process I used in number 1. First, I write my formula, my distance formula. So distance equals the square root of second x minus first x squared plus second y minus first y squared. Next, I'm going to plug in my values. First x, first y, because that's the first point. Second x, second y, because 3, -5 is the second point. Excuse me. Now I'm going to plug in those values. So my second x is 3 minus my first x, which is -2. So 3 minus the -2, I can leave it like this, but since I know that 2 negatives makes a positive, I'm going to go ahead and do that. 2 negatives make a positive. Plus, second y is -5 minus my first y is 0 squared. And just like before, I'm going to go over to Desmos because I do this for the sake of accuracy. Again, you can do this by hand. I just like to use the calculator for accuracy. Square root symbol, parenthesis, and my let's see, I should have jotted that point down. Let me go back and read it real quick. So I have 3 plus 2 squared plus negative 5 minus 0 squared. Okay. So I have 3 plus 2 squared plus parenthesis. Now I know negative 5 minus 0 is negative 5, but I'm going to again type it in. Now I have 7.07 da 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 da. So let's talk about this. If I had this and I wanted you to round to the nearest tenth, one number after the decimal, it'd be 7.1. If I wanted you to round it to the nearest hundredth, it'd be 7.07. I want you to be careful with your rounding in this lesson. So let's round to the nearest tenth. So 7.0, but the number after it is 7. So the distance between these is about 7.1 units. So that's how you find the distance between 2 points. Now let's talk about how do we find the midpoint between 2 points. And you know, a mid means half. So this is just, I don't know why I put is approximately. Midpoint is halfway between 2 points. So when I ask you to find the midpoint, that's what I'm asking you to find. So first, our formula for midpoint is a parenthesis, because your midpoint is going to be a point midway between. So to find the x value, you're going to say first x plus second x divided by 2, because you're finding the average of the 2 points, the midway point. And then to find the y, y1 plus y2, you add the 2 y's and divide by 2. So let's find the midpoint between negative 4, 4, and negative 2, 2. So let's write our formula. And until you have this memorized, I do want you to write this formula, because that's going to help you memorize it instead of having to explicitly study. Now, our y, or our x's, I have negative 4 plus a negative 2 divided by 2. And then for my y's, because remember this is x1, y1, x2, y2, my y's are 4 and 2. So I'm going to say 4 plus 2 divided by 2. Now again, you can use your calculator for each of these. That is no problem. Negative 4 plus negative 2 is negative 6. And negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3. And then for my y, 4 plus 2 is 6, and 6 divided by 2 is positive 3. So my midpoint between these 2 points is the point negative 3, 3. Well, guess what? Just like sometimes they give you the graph for distance, I'm going to do the same thing for midpoint. So I want to find the halfway point, or the midpoint of this line. So the first thing I have to do is read the points. So in your notes, I just want you to sketch the line. And again, we're going to write the coordinates. So the first point is negative 4, negative 1. So that's my first point, negative 4, negative 1. And my second end point, by the way, those are called end points, that's important, is 5, 1, 2, 3. 5, 3. 5, 3. All right, so let's find the midpoint between these. First, start with your formula. Add the x's, divide by 2. Add the y's, divide by 2. So let's do that. My x's are negative 4 plus 5 divided by 2, comma, add your y's, negative 1 plus 3 divided by 2. So let's do that. Negative 4 plus 5 is 1 divided by 2. I'm going to leave that as 1/2. You can also write 0.5, it's the same thing. Negative 1 plus 3 is 2, and 2 divided by 2 is 1. So watch this. This is what I like. If I plot this, over 1/2, up 1, you're going to see that that is the midpoint. That's exactly halfway between your 2 points. Now there's an extra piece to this. Sometimes I will ask you to find the endpoint. So I want you to find the endpoint given a midpoint of, let's see, let me give you your midpoint, 1, 3, and a second endpoint of -2, 5. So here's an extra piece to finding a midpoint. So it's important, first of all, to understand what you have. I have the midpoint and I have one endpoint. I want to find the other endpoint. So what we actually do, remember, a point is x, y. So I have to split that midpoint up, x, y, and find the x and y. Here's what I mean. The typical midpoint formula is add your x's, divide by 2, add your y's, divide by 2. But I need to find my x, so I'm going to pull out my x portion of my formula and use the other endpoint and the midpoint. So watch this. What is the x value of my midpoint? It's 1, okay? What is the x value of my endpoint that it gave me? It's -2. Okay, see how I plug in what I have, and now I'm just going to work backwards and solve for that x value that I need. So first, I'm going to multiply both sides by 2. So 2 equals, this just cancels, -2 plus the second x. How am I going to isolate this x? Now I'm going to add 2 to both sides. 2 plus 2 is 4 equals the x. It doesn't matter what you label it, but this is the x value of that other endpoint that I want to find. Now I have to pull out the y part, y1 plus y2 divided by 2, to find the y value of that other endpoint. So M stands for midpoint. What's the y of the midpoint? It's 3. Equals, what's the first y that they give us? -2, 5. Well, it's 5. So 5 plus y2 divided by 2. Now I want to solve for y. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 2. So I get 6 equals, this cancels because that's like, well, anyway, that cancels. So I have 5 plus the second y. How am I going to isolate that y, or that y2? The opposite of plus 5 is to subtract 5 from both sides. 6 minus 5 is 1 equals, 5 minus 5 cancels, the second y. So what is my other endpoint? It is 4, because that's my x value, 1, because that's my y value. So that is how you use the midpoint formula to help you find a missing endpoint.